We need our quiet time. Be creative. Ask ourselves, if your knees bent the other way, what would a chair look like? I ask that right now because if they bent the other way, I'd be in that bucket. I always wanted my arms to be able to come off so I could take them off at night when I go to bed. They always fall asleep before I do. I wish you could just pick it up and hang it up. What would you hang the other one up with?
Good morning. It's Monday, Medal of Honor Monday, December the 4th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the shorts, the military shorts, Bishop Barron, 33 Strategies of War, and former President Donald Trump presenting the Medal of Honor. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I shouldn't change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
Do you know how our culture puts such a premium now on safety, doesn't it? Safe spaces and keeping us safe, and I'm being threatened, and that's threatening my safety. Well, look, I mean, I get it. We all want to be safe. It's a value. But can I suggest to you that a religion that puts before our eyes a man pinned to a cross is not a religion putting a high priority on safety? The saints don't strike me as people that were really big on safety. Rather, find your mission. Let Christ come to life in you. Set your heart on fire. Become, in some way, and look, it's different for every one of us, because the Lord gave us distinctive gifts and a distinctive experience and background. We're meant to carry His love into the world in some distinctive way. And then you'll know who you are. Do your mission. You'll find joy, and you'll transfigure the world.
And that was Bishop Robert Barron. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the military shorts.
All of a sudden, this plane come over, boom, boom. One bomb in the front, one bomb in the back. All hell broke loose. They had 100 life jackets for 1,100 guys. What am I going to do? Everything's on fire, everything's exploding, everything. Whew, you're about a 3-story high from the ship to the water. I can't swim, dog paddle. To hell with it. Off I go, whoa, in the water. I'm in there for 2-3 hours before somebody picks us up. Diesel oil all around you and everything from our ship that just got bombed. We lost 605 minutes. That was the biggest disaster in World War II.
As a driver, and the man who asked we not identify him says he's never had a scare like this before. He had just picked up one customer. He had arrived at the next customer's home, and then this happened. It was just before 4 in the morning, Wednesday, here on Hartman Court in Kirkwood.
So all of a sudden, some headlights popped up behind me.
A rideshare driver had just arrived at his next customer's home.
I just heard bang, 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 somebody banging on my window.
Another person pointing a gun at one of the customers in the car, both of them wearing masks.
And the guy is telling me to get out the car, get out the car.
That's when the other woman he went to pick up came out of her home.
Her garage door opens. She doesn't know what's going on. She's just coming out to get in my car.
The bad guys took off in the car they pulled up in.
They don't want anybody witnessing the act because somebody may actually see the vehicle that he drove up in, and if they're smart.
The A-10 Warthog is a specialized close air support aircraft that has gained a reputation as a highly effective and resilient combat aircraft. By the way, why is the engine located so high? The Warthog's engines are mounted high on the aircraft primarily to protect them from damage caused by debris and foreign objects commonly encountered during low-altitude operations. By positioning the engines above the wing, the A-10 can minimize the risk of ingesting dirt, sand, and other potentially harmful materials that could compromise engine performance or lead to catastrophic failures. Additionally, one of the most serious threats in that environment is man-portable air defense systems. Man-pads. They typically use infrared guidance or heat-seeking. The design of the tail prevents the exhaust from being seen from most rear-quarter aspect angles from the side and below, in addition to creating redundant control surfaces spaced widely apart.
For the first time in 4 decades, the U.S. Army unveiled a wholly new armored fighting vehicle, the M10 Booker. The Booker looks very similar to the Abrams. Both are fully tracked vehicles with a 4-person crew, 360-degree turret, large caliber main gun, and a commander's independent thermal viewer that allows visibility at night and in multiple directions. But the Booker is just over half the weight of the latest Abrams tank. In order to get a vehicle in this weight class, the Army had to be more strategic about the level of armor. Just look at the turret on the Booker compared to the Abrams.
You can see from the roof on the turret in particular is actually armor.
The turret connects the gun to the main body of the vehicle.
The turret front is usually thought to be the part of the vehicle that is most likely to be hit by an enemy. Abrams' turret is very well protected. Booker's turret is probably fairly well protected, but the expectation is not there that it would be as survivable as Abrams.
"Look out! My missile's fired!" shouted the F-100 pilot just before his malfunctioning AIM-9 missile slammed into a B-52 bomber during training. Of course, the missile was never supposed to launch, but that wouldn't change what happened next. The B-52 pilot grabbed the controls just as the missile hit, but it was too late. The explosion severed the B-52's wing, causing it to spiral down through the clouds. Fighting against G-forces, the pilot punched the bailout alarm and then released the ejection handle, which threw him clear of the plummeting aircraft and straight into a fireball. A split second later, he was drenched by the plane's jet fuel, which extinguished the fire but made him dangerously flammable. What's more, the cord from the 650-pound ejection seat had snagged on his leg, and he had to fight desperately to free himself. He succeeded, but still hit the ground so hard his equipment shattered on impact. Luckily, he survived. But 3 of the 8 B-52 crew members lost their lives in the accident, which was later found to be caused by moisture in the missile's firing circuit.
More tensions in the region unfolding overnight. Ballistic missiles were fired toward a US Navy ship after it came to help a tanker in trouble. Our Chief Global Affairs anchor Martha Rannett joins us now with more. Good morning, Martha. Good morning, Lindsay. This is an incident at sea involving a hijacked ship. Pirates and ballistic missiles launched toward a US Navy warship. It began when a commercial cargo ship in the Gulf of Aden made a distress call saying they were under attack from armed men in a small boat. US Central Command says the USS Mason, a Navy destroyer, gave chase as the 5 attackers tried to flee the cargo ship in a small boat, finally surrendering then hours after that initial attack. 2 ballistic missiles were fired in the direction of the USS Mason from Yemen, where Iranian Bakuis operate. The missiles fell far short of the Mason, about 10 miles away, but US ships in the region have been in the line of fire since the war in Gaza began, although this morning it is still unclear whether this attack on the commercial vessel, which is owned by a company led by an Israeli-born shipping Magnet is part of these. Larger threats coming from these Iranian-backed forces. Hi everyone, G. Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel.
Here's how soldiers storm a trench. Trench warfare is designed to protect soldiers and let them snipe at approaching enemy troops from within a deep-dug tunnel on the battlefield. But they're not invincible. The first key to storming a trench is not to play the enemy's game. The soldiers in the trench want this to be a straight shootout where they have the advantage, so intelligence is key to surviving. Knowing where the trench is, how long it is, and where soldiers are hiding is essential. That allows the approaching army to make a move from several different locations. But beyond that, the key is overwhelming force. To break a trench, an approaching army will need a significant number of ground troops, heavy artillery, and snipers that will make the defenders keep their heads down or risk dying. That's just stage one. Next, hit the trench repeatedly with shells or other artillery and attempt to smoke the enemy soldiers out. Finally, be prepared for a costly troop charge against the trench. A well-organized trench of soldiers can take on a superior army, but once the trench unit is weakened, the playing field is evened out.
We all know about the bombing of Pearl Harbor that took place on December 7th, 1941. But what about the second bombing? You see, after the first attack, Japan felt that they had unfinished business, particularly when it came to the U.S. Navy's aircraft carriers. So they devised Operation K, an attack that was meant to gather intelligence while terrorizing the local population. The plan went like this. 5 H-8K flying boats would cross 1,900 miles of Pacific Ocean, refuel at a waiting submarine, and then continue on to Oahu, where they'd drop a total of 20 bombs on one of Pearl Harbor's most important docks. However, due to unexpected problems, only 2 of the bombers made the journey, and after running into bad weather, one simply dropped its bombs into the sea. The other bomber likewise missed the target, and its bombs landed near a school where all they managed to do was break some windows. Importantly, neither bomber was able to gather intelligence regarding the American fleet.
In an age filled with flamboyant, dashing cavalry officers, one Hellraiser stood out above them all. Antoine Lassalle, the Hussar General. He first distinguished himself at Rivoli in 1797, charging the Austrians with just 26 men and capturing an entire battalion. Lassalle was fearless and full of swagger. Any hussar who isn't dead by 30 is a good-for-nothing, he declared. He fought on every front, was a superb horseman, and always attacked the enemy without regard for the odds. In 1806, Lassalle's hussars earned the nickname the Infernal Brigade for their relentless pursuit of the Prussians, riding ahead of the army and capturing thousands of prisoners. The bravest man in Napoleon's army died at the Battle of Wagram in 1809, shot dead, charging at the enemy.
Why does Mexico have no fighter jets? Put yourself in Mexico's shoes. The nations to the south don't have an air force to fear, so there's no need for them to have a large air force. The nation to the north of them has an air force so large they couldn't possibly defend themselves. So why bother paying millions to get a small number of jets when the powerful nation next door has to watch your airspace to ensure their own security? Mexico do have a small number of F-5 jet fighters.
And that was the military shorts. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now we'll pick up where we left off with the 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene.
Do not be lured by the need to be liked. Better to be respected, even feared. Victory over your enemies will bring you a more lasting popularity. From The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Don't depend on the enemy not coming. Depend rather on being ready for him. Keys to warfare. We live in an era in which people are seldom directly hostile. The rules of engagement, social, political, military, have changed, and so must your notion of the enemy. An upfront enemy is rare now, and is actually a blessing. People hardly ever attack you openly anymore, showing their intentions, their desire to destroy you. Instead, they are political and indirect. Although the world is more competitive than ever, outward aggression is discouraged. So people have learned to go underground, to attack unpredictably and craftily. Many use friendship as a way to mask aggressive desires. They come close to you to do more harm. A friend knows best how to hurt you. Or, without actually being friends, they offer assistance and alliance. They may seem supportive, but in the end, they're advancing their own interests at your expense. Then there are those who master moral warfare, playing the victim, making you feel guilty for something unspecified you've done. The battlefield is full of these warriors, slippery, evasive, and clever. Understand, the word enemy, from the Latin inimicus, not a friend, has been demonized and politicized. Your first task as a strategist is to widen your concept of the enemy, to include in that group those who are working against you, thwarting you, even in subtle ways. Sometimes indifference and neglect are better weapons than aggression because you can't see the hostility they hide. Without getting paranoid, you need to realize that there are people who wish you ill and operate indirectly. Identify them, and you'll suddenly have room to maneuver. You can stand back and wait and see, or you can take action, whether aggressive or just evasive, to avoid the worst. You can even work to turn this enemy into a friend. But whatever you do, do not be the naive victim. Do not find yourself constantly retreating, reacting to your enemy's maneuvers. Arm yourself with prudence, and never completely lay down your arms, not even for friends. People are usually good at hiding their hostility, but often they unconsciously give off signals showing that all is not what it seems. One of the closest friends and advisors of the Chinese Communist Party leader Mao Zedong was Lin Biao, a high-ranking member of the Politburo and possible successor to the chairman. In the late 1960s and early 70s, though, Mao detected a change in Lin. He had become effusively friendly. Everyone praised Mao, but Lin's praise was embarrassingly fervent. To Mao, this meant that something was wrong. He watched Lin closely and decided that the man was plotting a takeover, or at the very least, positioning himself for the top spot. And Mao was right. Lin was plotting busily. The point is not to mistrust all friendly gestures, but to notice them. Register any change in the emotional temperature. Unusual chumminess, a new desire to exchange confidences, excessive praise of you to third parties, the desire for an alliance that may make more sense for the other person than for you. Trust your instincts. If someone's behavior seems suspicious, it probably is. It may turn out to be benign, but in the meantime, it is best to be on your guard. You can sit back and read the signs, or you can actively work to uncover your enemies. Beat the grass to startle the snakes, as the Chinese say. In the Bible, we read of David's suspicion that his father-in-law, King Saul, secretly wanted him dead. How could David find out? He confided his suspicion to Saul's son, Jonathan, his close friend. Jonathan refused to believe it, so David suggested a test. He was expected at court for a feast. He would not go. Jonathan would attend and pass along David's excuse, which would be adequate but not urgent. Sure enough, the excuse enraged Saul, who exclaimed, "Send at once and fetch him unto me. He deserves to die." David's test succeeded because it was ambiguous. His excuse for missing the feast could be read in more than one way. If Saul meant well toward David, he would have seen his son-in-law's absence as no more than selfish at worst. But because he secretly hated David, he saw it as effrontery, and it pushed him over the edge. Follow David's example. Say or do something that can be read in more than one way, that may be superficially polite, but that could also indicate a slight coolness on your part, or be seen as a subtle insult. A friend may wonder, but will let it pass. The secret enemy, though, will react with anger. Any strong emotion, and you will know that there's something boiling under the surface. Often the best way to get people to reveal themselves is to provoke tension and argument. The Hollywood producer Harry Cohn, president of Universal Pictures, frequently used this strategy to ferret out the real position of people in the studio who refused to show what side they were on. He would suddenly attack their work or take an extreme position, even an offensive one, in an argument. His provoked directors and writers would drop their usual caution and show their real beliefs. Understand, people tend to be vague and slippery because it is safer than outwardly committing to something. If you are the boss, they will mimic your ideas. Their agreement is often pure courtiership. Get them emotional. People are usually more sincere when they argue. If you pick an argument with someone and he keeps on mimicking your ideas, you may be dealing with a chameleon, a particularly dangerous type. Beware of people who hide behind a facade of vague abstractions and impartiality. No one is impartial. A sharply worded question, an opinion designed to offend, will make them react and take sides. Sometimes it is better to take a less direct approach with your potential enemies, to be as subtle and conniving as they are. In 1519, Hernán Cortés arrived in Mexico with his band of adventurers. Among these 500 men were some whose loyalty was dubious. Throughout the expedition, whenever any of Cortés's soldiers did something he saw as suspicious, he never got angry or accusatory. Instead, he pretended to go along with them, accepting and approving what they had done. Thinking Cortés weak, or thinking he was on their side, they would take another step. Now he had what he wanted, a clear sign to himself and others that they were traitors. Now he could isolate and destroy them. Adopt the method of Cortés. If friends or followers whom you suspect of ulterior motives suggest something subtly hostile or against your interests or simply odd, avoid the temptation to react, to say no, to get angry, or even to ask questions. Go along, or seem to turn a blind eye. Your enemies will soon go further, showing more of their hand. Now you have them in sight, and you can attack. An enemy is often large and hard to pinpoint, an organization, or a person hidden behind some complicated network. What you want to do is take aim at one part of the group, a leader, a spokesman, a key member of the inner circle. That is how the activist Saul Alinsky tackled corporations and bureaucracies. In his 1960s campaign to desegregate Chicago's public school system, he focused on the superintendent of schools, knowing full well that this man would try to shift the blame upward. By taking repeated hits at the superintendent, he was able to publicize his struggle, and it became impossible for the man to hide. Eventually, those behind him had to come to his aid, exposing themselves in the process. Like Alinsky, never aim at a vague, abstract enemy. It is hard to drum up the emotions to fight such a bloodless battle, which in any case leaves your enemy invisible. Personalize the fight, eyeball to eyeball. Danger is everywhere. There are always hostile people and destructive relationships. The only way to break out of a negative dynamic is to confront it. Repressing your anger, avoiding the person threatening you, always looking to conciliate, these common strategies spell ruin. Avoidance of conflict becomes a habit, and you lose the taste for battle. Feeling guilty is pointless. It is not your fault you have enemies. Feeling wronged or victimized is equally futile. In both cases, you are looking inward, concentrating on yourself and your feelings. Instead of internalizing a bad situation, externalize it and face your enemy. It is the only way out. The child psychologist Jean Piaget saw conflict as a critical part of mental development. Through battles with peers and then parents, children learn to adapt to the world and develop strategies for dealing with problems. Those children who seek to avoid conflict at all cost, or those who have overprotective parents, end up handicapped socially and mentally.
And that was the next part of the 33 Strategies of War, Chapter 1, Declare War on Your Enemies. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, former President Donald Trump awards the Congressional Medal of Honor to Staff Sergeant David G. Balavia.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States, accompanied by Medal of Honor recipient Staff Sergeant David G. Bellavia, United States Army.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me as we mark this ceremony in a word of prayer. The Lord is my light and my salvation, and whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life, and of whom shall I be afraid? Righteous, just, and loving God, today we gather to honor the spirit of a warrior who put others' safety above his own and ran toward danger, meeting it face to face. We give thanks for Staff Sergeant David Bellavia, an example of heroism, whose spirit shone bright in the darkest hours of battle. His character, commitment, and courage were revealed in a moment, but they were forged over a lifetime by his faith, his family, his friends, and a disciplined life of selfless devotion to duty. God bless David, his family, and his many comrades in arms this very day. Let his life, legacy, and indeed this very medal that is placed around his neck be an inspiration for all to face our fears and place others over self. I pray these things in your mighty and most holy and gracious name. Amen.
Thank you very much, please. Thank you, Chaplain, very much. It's really beautiful. Today is my privilege to award the highest military honor to an American soldier who demonstrated exceptional courage to protect his men and defend our nation. Will you please join me in welcoming Staff Sergeant David Bellavia. David, thank you. David is the first living recipient to earn the Congressional Medal of Honor for his bravery in the Iraq War. And we're honored to have with us distinguished leaders of our military. I want to recognize Acting Deputy Secretary of Defense, David Norquist. David, thank you very much, and congratulations. Acting Secretary of the Army, Ryan McCarthy. Come here, Ryan. Let me just say hello to you. Congratulations. It just happened yesterday, so I have to congratulations. Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Paul Selva. Thank you, Paul. Army Chief of Staff, General Mark Milley. Hi, Mark. And Sergeant Major of the Army, Daniel Daly. Thank you, Daniel, very much. Thanks as well to members of Congress who join us. Representative Liz Cheney. Thanks, Liz. Chris Collins. Thanks, Chris. Dan Crenshaw. Tom Reed. Thank you. Thank you, Tom. I see you over there, Tom. Thank you very much. Joining David for this special ceremony are his wife, Deanna, and 3 children, Evan, Aiden, and Vivian, along with his mother, Marilyn, and his brothers, Daniel and Rand. I want to thank you all for being here. A very special day for you and for all of us, for the nation, actually. Thank you. Thank you. David's father, William, passed away in 2017, and though he's no longer with us, we know that today he must be one of those proud dads. He's looking down upon us from heaven, and he's very proud of his son and his son's family. I have to say that. Thank you, David. Finally, we are gratified to be joined by 8 previous Medal of Honor recipients. And I have to tell you, I've got to know just about all of them. You are forever with us. You inspire us. You are truly brave, great people. Thank you very much for being here. Brave people. David grew up in Western New York. He was the youngest of 4 children. As a boy, he would listen to stories from his grandfather, a World War II veteran and hero in his own right, who earned a Bronze Star in the Normandy campaign. I just came back from Normandy. That was something. As David remembers, his grandfather's stories were always vivid, with source of pride, and they were delivered very beautifully. There was a nobility and purpose in the infantry, and David saw that at a very young age. I wanted to be what my grandfather was. David would often say, I wanted to be part of this noble adventure. Is that right? That's a pretty good quote, would you say? Better say yes, otherwise I have a problem. In 1999, David followed the example of his grandfather and joined the United States Army Infantry. Several months after the September 11th attack on our nation, David deployed, saying goodbye to his wife and his son, Evan. He served in Germany, Kosovo, and then in Iraq. In November of 2004, after nearly a year of intense enemy combat in Iraq, David led his squad into battle to liberate the city of Fallujah and anti-Iraq forces. That was a tough place. This operation was the bloodiest battle of the Iraq War. For 3 days straight, David and his men kicked down doors, searched houses, and destroyed enemy weapons, never knowing where they would find a terrorist lurking next, and there were plenty of them. The third day of battle was November 10th, David's 29th birthday. That night, his squad was tasked with clearing 12 houses occupied by insurgents. Very dangerous operation. They entered house after house and secured 9 of the buildings. Then came the 10th. That was a tough one. It was a 3-story building surrounded by a 9-foot wall. As they entered the house and moved into the living room, 2 men were behind concrete barricades. They opened fire on David and everybody. In the dark of night, shards of glass, brick and plaster flew into the air, wounding multiple soldiers. The rounds of fire ripped holes into the wall, separating the Americans from the terrorists. The wall was ripped to shreds. David knew they had to get out. David thought that they had it. He leapt into the torrent of bullets and fired back at the enemy without even thinking. The insurgents, he just took over. David took over. He provided suppressive fire while his men evacuated, rescuing his entire squad at the risk of his own life. Only when his men were all out did David exit the building. But the fighting was far from over. Militants on the roof fired down at them with round after deadly round. A Bradley fighting vehicle came to the scene to suppress the enemy and drove them further into the building. Knowing that he would face almost certain death, David decided to go back inside the house and make sure that not a single terrorist escaped alive or escaped in any way. He quickly encountered an insurgent who was about to fire a rocket-propelled grenade at his squad. David once again jumped into danger and killed him before he had a chance to launch that grenade. Next, 2 more insurgents came out of hiding and fired at David. He returned fire, killing them both. Then a third assailant burst out of a wardrobe, wearing a wardrobe, and opened fire. David shot and wounded the man, but he escaped up the stairs. Racing after him, David engaged in hand-to-hand combat and killed him too. Bleeding and badly wounded, David had single-handedly defeated the forces who had attacked his unit and would have killed them all had it not been for the bravery of David. Just then, yet another combatant jumped down from the 3rd-story roof and attacked. David shot him, and the assailant fell off the balcony. Alone in the dark, David killed 4 insurgents and seriously wounded the 5th, saving his soldiers and facing down the enemies of civilization. Here with us today are 32 American service members who fought with David in Iraq, including 12 who are with David on that very, very horrible and dangerous November night. Please stand. Did he do a good job? If not, it's not too late. Thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it very much. Also with us are 5 families of David's brothers in arms who made the supreme sacrifice. To the Gold Star families of Sean Sims, Stephen Falkenberg, Scott Lawson, J.C. Madison, and Michael Carlson, our entire nation expresses our love, loyalty, and everlasting gratitude. Please stand, please. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. Thank you. David often tells young people, Americans don't want to fight, but if someone picks a fight with us, we will always win because we don't fight for awards or recognition. We fight for love of our country, our homeland, our family, and our unit, and that's stronger than anything the enemy has. So thank you, and thank you to his family very much. Great family, David. Thank you. David exemplifies the same warrior ethos that gave his grandfather and all of the heroes of Normandy the strength to defeat evil exactly 75 years ago. I hear that his grandfather Joseph is now 99 years old and that today he's watching this ceremony at his home in Jamestown, New York. A lot of people are watching, David. America is blessed with the heroes and great people like Staff Sergeant Bellavia, whose intrepid spirit and unwavering resolve defeats our enemies, protects our freedoms, and defends our great American flag. David, today we honor your extraordinary courage. We salute your selfless service, and we thank you for carrying on the legacy of American valor that has always made our blessed nation the strongest and mightiest anywhere in the world. And we're doing better today than we've ever done. Our country is stronger now, and we're doing better economically than ever before. We're setting records, and you fought for something that's really good, and we appreciate it, David. Really appreciate it. Thank you. And now I'm very pleased to ask the military aide to come forward while I present the Congressional Medal of Honor to Staff Sergeant David Bellavia. Please.
The President of the United States of America, authorized by Act of Congress, March 3, 1863, has awarded in the name of Congress the Medal of Honor to Staff Sergeant David G. Bellavia, United States Army, for conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty. Staff Sergeant David G. Bellavia distinguished himself by acts of gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty on November 10, 2004, while serving as squad leader in support of Operation Phantom Fury in Fallujah, Iraq. While clearing a house, a squad from Staff Sergeant Bellavia's platoon became trapped within a room by intense enemy fire coming from a fortified position under the stairs leading to the second floor. Recognizing the immediate severity of the situation and with disregard for his own safety, Staff Sergeant Bellavia retrieved an automatic weapon and entered the doorway of the house to engage the insurgents. With enemy rounds impacting around him, Staff Sergeant Bellavia fired at the enemy position at a cyclic rate, providing covering fire that allowed the squad to break contact and exit the house. A Bradley fighting vehicle was brought forward to suppress the enemy. However, due to high walls surrounding the house, it could not fire directly at the enemy position. Staff Sergeant Bellavia then re-entered the house and again came under intense enemy fire. He observed an enemy insurgent preparing to launch a rocket-propelled grenade at his platoon. Recognizing the grave danger the grenade posed to his fellow soldiers, Staff Sergeant Bellavia assaulted the enemy position, killing one insurgent and wounding another who ran to a different part of the house. Staff Sergeant Bellavia, realizing he had an uncleared, darkened room to his back, moved to clear it. As he entered, an insurgent came down the stairs firing at him. Simultaneously, the previously wounded insurgent reemerged and engaged Staff Sergeant Bellavia. Staff Sergeant Bellavia, entering further into the darkened room, returned fire and eliminated both insurgents. Staff Sergeant Bellavia then received enemy fire from another insurgent emerging from a closet in the darkened room. Exchanging gunfire, Staff Sergeant Bellavia pursued the enemy up the stairs and eliminated him. Now on the second floor, Staff Sergeant Bellavia moved to a door that opened onto the roof. At this point, a fifth insurgent leapt from the third floor roof onto the second floor roof. Staff Sergeant Bellavia engaged the insurgent through a window, wounding him in the back and legs, and caused him to fall off the roof. Acting on instinct to save the members of his platoon from an imminent threat, Staff Sergeant Bellavia ultimately cleared an entire enemy-filled house.
And that was former President Donald Trump presenting the Congressional Medal of Honor to Staff Sergeant Bellavia. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there and reminding you to be honest, smart, and beautiful, and remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.